Hello, everyone. My name's Janelle Riley. I'm an editor at Variety, and I am so thrilled to be here today for this virtual event with Netflix's Scene Stealers. And so excited to highlight not only some of the best performances of the year, but the often unsung heroes behind the scenes, the casting directors. Season three of the Emmy winning Ozark started off with a bang, introducing a new character this season with Ben Davis, the volatile brother of Laura Linney's Wendy.
You want to know what a piece of shit your mother is, Aaron? Thinks she's a fucking lawyer? Well, she ain't. She's a fucking monster. My sister is a monster. Her husband is a monster, too. You know what they really do? Who they really work for, Aaron? They launder drug money. Drug money, Aaron, for the Navarro drug cartel.
That's enough. You need to turn around and you need to leave now.
Fuck you. Fuck God. The fuck was that?
Previously seen on shows like Iron Fist and Banshee, actor Tom Pelphrey broke through in a big way in this role. And joining him as casting director, producer Alexa Fogel, who has brought so many ensembles to life from NYPD Blue to Pose to True Detective, and has been honored with 12 Emmy nominations and 3 wins. She also produced the just released Netflix documentary, A Secret Love. Tom and Alexa, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Absolutely. I want to start with Alexa because I know you've been working on Ozark since the very first episode. What's it sort of like going into season three, where you're adding actors into an ensemble that's not only been together for 2 seasons, but won so much acclaim? What are you looking for? And then specifically, how were you aware of Tom's work?
Well, Tom can address how I'm aware of him. We've known each other for a long, long time, and I was also the casting director on Banshee. Um, but Chris Mundy is very, very good at walking me through what we're going to be, sort of what the arcs are going to be for the season and what the new characters are. Because as we do on Ozark, we kill a lot of people, so we add a lot of new, wonderful themes and new characters. And this is something we talked about very specifically, and we had talked about it for some time, even before the beginning of this season, because we knew that there was going to be this brother who's referred to in season one, of Laura's character, that would come back and wreak some emotional and personal havoc for everybody. So I knew that going in, and I know what the stakes are on this show. Chris and I have a great relationship, and then Jason and Chris and I have a really collaborative relationship when it comes to talking about actors, because we all love actors and we all love acting, and the writing is really needs to be served. That's the idea. He tells the story a little better than I do, but I met Tom shortly after he got out of grad school, uh, drama school. Is that right, Tom? Yeah. Um, I was casting a David Simon limited series called Generation Kill, which he was too young for, but I'll let you take away the rest of that story.
Yeah, well, so I come in to read for, the great and powerful Alexa Fogel for the first time. And I'm a 24-year-old actor. I'm like, "Whew," I'm all prepared. I got my sides. I read for the role. Alexa, watches me read and just kind of nods her head and says, I think you're more right for a different role. So she hands me the sides for the other part. I go home, I study, 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 come back a day or two later, read for the other role, and Alexa kind of nods and say, okay, okay. Then I leave and I'm like, I don't know what just happened. I don't know what just happened. It felt okay, but I'm not sure. And my agents called me and they said, we just got a call from Alexa Fogel, who said, you're an incredible actor. And I mean, I just got chills saying that again. But, at 24 years old, that was a major win for me. Like, not all wins are about booking jobs or, getting roles. That was really meant a lot to me, that somebody who'd done such amazing work, who I respected, went out of her way to call my agents and say, not this one, but he's really talented. And that takes you a long way, especially when you're a young actor. These things are so meaningful, and they're most people never even know about them.
But I think that brings up an important point that I just want to touch on, because I think it's an important thing between casting directors and actors, which is this is a partnership, and it's one that goes on sometimes for a very, very long time. When you are in that room together, you are trying to serve the material do your best work. And I would say, in all fairness, that Tom and I have worked for many years up to the point of the character of Ben. And Banshee was a part of that too. But you're not always the right age. You're not. There are a lot of reasons why you can do good work in an audition room and not get a role. But I think that that collaboration between us is something that is about the long game, and I think it's important to understand that.
Absolutely. I always hear that you're not just auditioning for a role when you go in. You're auditioning for future roles. And this is such great evidence of that. And Tom, were you a fan of Ozark before this audition came your way, or did you have to do some homework?
No, I loved it. I couldn't believe it. Right when the second season came out on Netflix, a few days after it was released, I binged the entire first and second season. I'm texting Alexa, "What the hell is this show? This is amazing." I love Harris Yulin, and his role was so great. The end of season one, what happens with Darlene, I just couldn't really understand what I was watching. I think the show strikes it walks such a fine line of this like hyper violent sort of almost like a graphic novel, like slightly elevated sense of like drama and suspense and violence, and yet I'm constantly laughing out loud. So it hits this dark humor that is so difficult to, I think, manage and keep both in balance. But I believe Ozark does it so well and always has.
And Ben is such a wonderful, meaty character. What did you know about him going in, and what excited you about this role, but also maybe scared you?
Well, we knew that it would be that he was Wendy's brother. And we knew that he had some issues, although it wasn't, Alexa, it wasn't spelled out exactly, was it,
Well, I
from the
mean,
beginning?
part of my job is I have to protect story from things leaking out. So I make sure to always make sure that the actor knows what they need to know to be able to do the material. And I think that that was absolutely true. I mean, I don't know that I probably did say that he was bipolar. I'm not sure I said that he's gone off his medication and he's having a relationship here, but I think at the scene that we used where you start to snap a little bit, and the part of it that was also very important was about the relationship, the affection between those two characters, and that's something that I think is much harder for an actor to do in an audition setting. Like, actors are love to be emotional. That's their thing. And to do it where you can contain it and it can be believable and naturalistic, which is what Ozark needs, which Tom did so beautifully. But to be able to have genuine comfort and history and affection with another character is really difficult. It's really hard to do. And that, for me, was the key to that audition process. But we've never talked about this.
And mental health is obviously a timely topic, and the show doesn't shy away from dealing with it. What was sort of your process in preparing to play Ben? Did you do any special research?
Yeah, I mean, I got a bunch of books and I was looking through multiple books, but I found one that I felt for me was the most instructive on multiple levels, and it was a book called An Unquiet Mind by Kay Jamison. And she writes about her onset of bipolar when she was a teenager and her struggles with education and school, friendships, her how it impacted her relationships with her family. Simultaneously, Kay is a doctor who's a mental health professional who's studying mental illness. Um, Interesting side note is that when she was experiencing the onset of bipolar, she didn't even know what it was. So some of her colleagues sort of had to have an intervention and help her understand what was going on, even though that was the thing she was studying. So just to sort of illustrate how this illness can be very tricky, and even for a doctor who is currently studying it, very hard to understand what's happening. But anyway, so the book gives you sort of this personal, almost journal of her struggles, and simultaneously she's the doctor explaining to you exactly what's happening, what the lithium does, what happens when you come off the lithium, why people come off the lithium. the physical symptoms. You know, it was sort of like I felt like it was like a great Bible resource.
Wow. And what's it like sort of joining this cast that's already so established, and you're sort of stepping in as the new guy, but you also have to have these previous relationships with actors like Laura Linney where you really feel like brother and sister.
Well, this is another area where Alexa plays a sort of vital role because yeah, I mean my relationship. It's interesting. My relationship with Julia obviously needs a certain chemistry, but that's a chemistry that is meant to be discovered in the moment as we go, and so like it can quite naturally play out. But obviously with Laura, we're meant to be brother and sister. We're meant to have known each other our whole lives. Laura and Alexa are very old friends and they go back a long way. And it was immediately a mutual point of contact and stories and funny stories with which we could bond. And of course, obviously, Alexa had, I am assuming, some foresight about how we might get along.
I mean, I've known Laura for, since the beginning of our careers. And she's been, she's a remarkable actress, of course, but she's also a remarkable, generous person who really believes in the work and how we do the work. But she's also, I mean, she's an incredible friend. I mean, the stories, I've told Tom some of them, but and Tom is as decent and good-hearted as anyone you could ever meet. And so those things tend to work out. Also, they're both incredibly hardworking, and you want to put those kinds of people together. In a situation like that, you don't want one person working harder than another in terms of preparation and showing up on the day.
Laura Linney said definitively, Alexa Fogel taught me how to audition.
She does always say that. She did used to come into my
Is that it?
office right after Juilliard and break into hives. Um, but, but I always forget that, and she does always say that. It's so funny. I'm sure it was
Yep.
just a matter of calming her a bit. But in any case, I'm sure that with any young actor, part of what you're doing is helping them learn how to manage their nerves and focus on the material and think about how you're going to bring the material to life so that the material is more important than whether or not you're going to do a good job or how you're going to look. And I think when you can sort of refocus the way you're thinking away from that. Also, Laura's father was a famous playwright. She thought she was only going to be a theater actor. She didn't have any idea about this whole thing with cameras and stuff when she got out of school. So I think it was also just very new, and and then you just have to sort of redirect that energy.
And Alexa, you've been putting together amazing ensembles for years. I mentioned some in the intro, NYPD Blue, all the way to Atlanta. What's the secret of a good ensemble?
Uh, I don't know that there is an actual answer to that. Every ensemble is different because it's all about the writing and the material and the tone of the piece and what it's asking for. I think that that's part of it. You have to be a good enough dramaturg to understand what the material is asking you for and communicate well with the people who are making it so that you fully understand that. And then, obviously Atlanta is a totally different tone than Ozark, than Plot Against America. I think it's about peopling the world in the purest possible way, given what it's asking you to do. And also, really practical.
And this Ozark is such an intense show. And Tom, this is such an intense character. Are you the kind of actor who takes your work home with you at the end of the day, or are you able to sort of unwind and relax and leave this character at the door, at least for the night?
Yeah, no, you definitely leave it. You come into work and pick it up, and when you're done with work, you sort of put it down. The things you take home sometimes are just, I wouldn't say that you're taking the character home and trying to live in the headspace or anything, but at a certain point it does, you just start to get tired. You can start to feel a bit drained. And so it just becomes paramount depending on what you're doing, just like, to take care of yourself, to just understand that you're going to need some extra sleep. You should probably eating pretty decent. Um, and just know that that's part of your job and part of your responsibility to sort of maintain your, your instrument through all that.
Would you have like any sort of a set ritual, like you would, come home and unwind, or watch
Yeah,
something?
come home and walk. Oh. Alexa knows.
We spend a lot of time talking about our dogs.
Yeah, she knows exactly what my ritual was. I was living in Grant Park in Atlanta, so I'd come home and I was right by Grant Park, and I'd put Blue on a leash and take him for like a 45-minute walk.
Nice. So, last question. Tom, for you, what did end up being the most challenging part of this role? A particular scene you had to play, or just something in your approach to the character?
Um, the most challenging part was to just give over and trust. I mean, I guess just kind of give over and trust the work and the process at a certain point, because it was there was a lot of it that was so um, kind of out on a limb, and I knew that if I was in any way watching myself or judging myself or self-conscious, that it was going to fail. So um, that being said, it becomes very easy to trust that you're in good hands when you're working on a show like Ozark, which is truly lined from top to bottom with the most talented, high quality human beings. And then when Laura Linney is your scene partner, you know that if you make a misstep, she will let you know, and then you can try.
That's so fantastic. Thank you guys so much for being here with us today. I so appreciate it. Congratulations on all the great work.